She always ran with a podcast in her ears. But that morning, what chased her wasn't a story, it was real. It was still dark outside. The streets of Memphis lay quiet, wrapped in the uneasy calm of an early September morning. Most of the city was still asleep. But Eliza Fletcher was already moving. At 34, Eliza's life seemed picture-perfect. A devoted wife, a mother of 2 young boys, a preschool teacher loved by every kid who walked into her classroom. But that wasn't all. Eliza was a runner, the kind who laced up her sneakers long before dawn, pushing through the stillness when everyone else was in bed. And that morning, September 2nd, 2022, was supposed to be just another run. She was training for the Boston Marathon, for miles out, for miles back, home in time to make breakfast, kiss her kids, and head to work. But Eliza never made it home. Before we go further, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Stories like these deserve to be heard, and your support keeps us telling them. Eliza's routine rarely changed. She loved running near the University of Memphis. The path was familiar, comforting. In her ears, a true crime podcast played, the same genre we're diving into now. Irony so cruel it hurts. Eliza was listening to stories of danger, not knowing she was becoming one. At home, Richard Fletcher woke up. The kids were still asleep, but something felt off. Eliza should have been home by now. She always texted if she was running late. Richard checked his phone. Nothing. He called. No answer. Texted again. Still nothing. Minutes stretched like hours. He knew his wife. This wasn't her. By 7 a.m., Richard made the call every spouse dreads. He called the police. Officers arrived quickly. It wasn't just any missing person. Eliza came from a family deeply rooted in Memphis, known and respected. And beyond that, it was unlike her to vanish. She had left the house with only a phone and water bottle. No purse, no plans to go elsewhere. Police contacted the University of Memphis. They warned students and staff. There might be danger lurking so close to campus. News spread like wildfire. Within hours, local media stations were broadcasting Eliza's photo. A smiling mother, brown hair pulled back, athletic build, a face suddenly everywhere. And with the news came speculation. The husband is always the first suspect in the public's mind. Viewers picked apart Richard's interviews, searching for signs of guilt. A quivering lip, an off expression, a word that sounded too calm. But detectives quickly found evidence to back him up. Richard had been home when Eliza left. His story checked out. Police turned their attention to the route Eliza ran every morning. They collected hours of surveillance footage, street cameras, business cameras, doorbell cams, anything that might capture the truth. And then they saw it. On grainy footage, time-stamped 4:20 a.m., Eliza ran past a parked dark-colored SUV. Seconds later, a man leaped out. The struggle was quick, brutal, and ended with Eliza forced into the car. The SUV waited there for 4 agonizing minutes, and then drove off, carrying Eliza into darkness. The case exploded into something else entirely. No longer a missing person. A kidnapping. Detectives knew every second mattered. They needed to find Eliza alive. They pulled more footage. The same SUV had circled the area minutes earlier, like a predator searching for prey. Police shared the video with the public. A dark SUV, a busted taillight. They hoped someone, somewhere, might recognize it. At the same time, search teams scoured roadsides, ditches, and vacant lots. They needed anything, a clue, a trace, then a breakthrough. That same morning, 7 miles away, someone found a phone and a water bottle on the side of the road. Next to them, a pair of men's flip-flops. It made no sense. Why would a kidnapper ditch his own shoes? Forensic teams rushed the flip-flops to the lab. The answer might be there, invisible to the eye, but written in DNA. As night fell over Memphis, fear gripped the city. A woman had been taken on a familiar morning jog. A predator was out there, and time was running out. The flip-flops looked ordinary. Cheap rubber, faded black. But under a microscope, they held the key to the mystery. Forensic scientists worked fast. Every minute counted. The kidnapper still had Eliza, and she might still be alive. Then a match. A name blinked on the screen. Cleotha Abston. He was 38. Not a stranger to crime. Not even close. Years before, at just 16, Cleotha had kidnapped a Memphis attorney at gunpoint, forced him into a car, drove around, demanding cash from ATMs. The attorney escaped, and Cleotha got caught. He served 2 decades behind bars, 20 years that should have kept him away. But in 2020, he was released early. Now, barely 2 years later, his DNA connected him to Eliza Fletcher's disappearance. Police wasted no time. They tracked Cleotha's black SUV. A busted taillight confirmed it was the same car from the footage. Early Saturday, they spotted him driving. Cleotha noticed them too. He tried to run, pulled into an apartment complex, vanished inside. Officers stormed the building. Seconds ticked by. Then, Cleotha was in custody. He didn't confess, didn't flinch, told detectives he didn't even know why he'd been arrested. But outside the interrogation room, the evidence kept growing. Police searched the SUV. In the back seat, they found traces of blood. Testing confirmed it. The blood belonged to Eliza. They searched his brother's apartment too. They didn't find Eliza there, but they did find something else: drugs and illegal guns. Cleotha's brother was arrested on separate charges. Detectives pressed Cleotha. They showed him the footage, the flip-flops, the blood. Still, he stayed silent. Outside, Memphis waited, a city caught between hope and dread. Prayers that Eliza might be alive, fears of what might already have happened. Investigators knew the first 48 hours were critical. Beyond that, chances of finding a kidnapping victim alive dropped sharply. Search teams combed abandoned lots, vacant homes, creeks choked with weeds, places few people dared to go. Each hour felt heavier than the last. And then Monday evening, 3 days after Eliza disappeared, a call crackled over the police radio. Searchers had found a body. It lay hidden in tall grass behind a vacant duplex, only a few hundred yards from where Eliza's phone had been tossed. Detectives hurried to the scene. They saw running shoes, athletic shorts, a woman's form, still and cold. They held onto a sliver of hope until the next morning. But the medical examiner confirmed what they already knew. It was Eliza Fletcher. The autopsy revealed the truth no one wanted to hear: multiple scrapes and bruises, signs of a struggle. But the cause of death was simple, final. A single gunshot wound to the head. Her shorts had been removed. They were later found in a nearby trash bin. Police didn't release details about sexual assault, but the evidence spoke loudly enough. Memphis reeled. For days, Eliza's face had been everywhere. On lampposts, phone screens, news broadcasts. Now the search was over, and the answer was heartbreak. Cleotha Abston faced charges: kidnapping, murder, and still he denied everything. But the public wanted to know more. Who was this man? And why had he been free to kill again? The records told a chilling story. At just 11 years old, Cleotha committed his first robbery. By 16, he had 16 more arrests. Guns, theft, violence. That kidnapping at 16 had earned him a 24-year sentence. But good behavior and parole hearings freed him after 20. Had he stayed behind bars for more years, Eliza Fletcher would have finished her run that morning, come home, kissed her kids, lived. Instead, Cleotha walked free. And in freedom, he hunted. The more people learned, the more outrage grew. Why was he on the streets? Why hadn't someone stopped him sooner? But the story didn't end there. Because soon, detectives uncovered something that made the failure of the system even harder to accept. Cleotha should have been locked away long before he ever saw Eliza. But a year earlier, another woman had tried to stop him. Her name was Alicia, and what she told detectives would shatter what faith remained in the system. Before Eliza, before that dark SUV prowled the Memphis streets, there was Alicia. Summer 2021. Alicia was 4 months pregnant, swiping through profiles on a dating app. She matched with a man named Cleotha. His profile seemed normal. A photo of a smiling face, A short bio, a few messages that turned into conversations. Then came the invite. "Come pick me up," Cleotha texted. He sent her an address. It was late, but Alicia was curious. She drove across town, turned down a cracked street lined with boarded-up buildings, stopped in front of the address he'd given. Cleotha stood outside, waving her over. Then he said, "Come in for a second." The door opened into darkness, walls stained and peeling. No furniture, just silence and that heavy, gut-deep sense that something wasn't right. Alicia's heart pounded. She told herself to turn around, but before she could, Cleotha pulled a gun. The world narrowed to the cold metal at her side. He forced her back to her car, told her to drive. Outside, Memphis lights blurred past. Inside, terror coiled in every breath. He sexually assaulted her in the car. Alicia begged, told him she was pregnant, hoping it might stop him. It didn't. When it was over, Cleotha stepped out, disappeared into the shadows, as if nothing had happened. Shaking, crying, Alicia drove herself to the hospital. Doctors examined her, collected a DNA sample. At the police station, she told detectives everything: the dating app, his messages, his name, his profile photo, even his phone number. They had it all. Alicia waited, believing justice was coming, that Cleotha would be arrested, that he'd never get the chance to hurt someone else. But days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Nothing happened. The DNA sample sat in a drawer, unprocessed, the police report unfinished. The case file gathered dust. Why? The department later said they were short-staffed. Too many cases, not enough officers. So Cleotha walked free. Free to steal, free to hunt, free to kill. The truth landed like a punch when Alicia learned about Eliza's abduction. The same man who had assaulted her, now accused of murder. The property where Eliza's body was found, it was the same abandoned building Cleotha had used to lure Alicia the year before. Alicia's voice shook when she spoke to reporters. She had tried to stop him, but the system hadn't listened, and the failure cut even deeper. The DNA sample from Alicia's assault wasn't uploaded to the FBI database until after Eliza was dead. If it had been processed in time, Cleotha's name would have surfaced months earlier. Police could have arrested him. Eliza would still be alive. It wasn't just a missed detail. It was a missed chance to save a life. Alicia filed a lawsuit against the city, desperate to hold someone accountable. But the lawsuit was dismissed. No one at the police department faced consequences. No official admitted fault. The response, "We're understaffed." To the public, it sounded like an excuse. To Alicia, it felt like betrayal. And it wasn't the only betrayal, because in those months after his release from prison, Cleotha kept breaking the law. Petty crimes, stolen credit cards, signs he hadn't changed. Just one day before Eliza's murder, Cleotha worked a cleaning shift at a movie theater. A co-worker noticed her credit cards were missing. She checked the security footage, and there he was, stealing the cards, wearing the same flip-flops police would later find by the roadside. She didn't have time to report the theft before Eliza vanished. But after Cleotha's arrest, charges for that theft were added too. Each piece told the same story. A man who should never have been free. A justice system that kept giving him another chance. And the cost of those chances was a woman's life. Eliza's murder became more than a local tragedy. It sparked national outrage. News anchors demanded answers. Why was he released early? Why wasn't Alicia's report enough? How many warnings did the system need? For Alicia, the guilt felt unbearable, even though it wasn't hers to carry. "I tried," she said through tears, but no one listened. In the days after Eliza's death, a city grieved, and the cracks in the system were laid bare. But the case wasn't over. Next came the courtroom, the charges, the trial, and the question everyone asked: would Cleotha finally be stopped for good? Eliza Fletcher was gone, but Memphis wasn't ready to let the story end. Outside the courthouse, crowds gathered, holding candles, holding signs with Eliza's face. Inside, Cleotha Abston faced a list of charges so long it felt impossible to read out loud. Kidnapping, murder, evidence tampering. and later the sexual assault of Alicia, the crime police had ignored. In interviews, prosecutors made it clear they wanted the death penalty. Eliza's family sat quietly in the courtroom, faces pale, eyes hollow from sleepless nights, and across the room, Cleotha, expression blank. No apology, no tears. He pled not guilty, insisted he had nothing to do with the kidnapping, the murder, or Alicia's assault. But the evidence kept coming. The DNA on the flip-flops, Eliza's blood in his SUV, surveillance footage, the cell phone tossed out the window, and still, Cleotha wouldn't speak. Prosecutors prepared for trial, witness lists, forensic experts, dozens of police officers ready to testify. The case was airtight, but the pain wasn't just legal, it was personal. For Richard Fletcher, every day in court was another wound. Watching videos of his wife's final moments, hearing medical details too painful to repeat. Eliza's parents kept coming, too. They sat in silence, hands clenched, reliving the nightmare. Then new charges were added. Police finally processed the DNA from Alicia's case. Cleotha was charged with aggravated rape and kidnapping, a case that should have been resolved a year before. And as if that wasn't enough, the stolen credit cards from the movie theater surfaced, too. Another crime, another victim, another chance the system missed. Public anger boiled over. Editorials slammed the parole board. Protesters demanded answers. Why was he free? How many warnings did you need? The mayor of Memphis promised reforms. The police department defended itself, blaming lack of resources. But to the families, those words felt hollow. Meanwhile, Cleotha's own family spoke to reporters. His mother insisted he was innocent, described him as a kind man misunderstood. She said, "He told me he didn't do it. I believe my son." But the rest of the city didn't. As the trial date approached, prosecutors offered Cleotha a choice. Plead guilty to Eliza's murder, accept life in prison without parole, or risk a trial and the death penalty. Days passed. Cleotha said nothing. Then, behind closed doors, he changed his mind. In October 2024, Cleotha Abston stood before a judge and pled guilty. The words felt mechanical coming from his lips. The judge asked, "Do you understand what you're admitting to?" Cleotha nodded. No apology, no explanation, just a deal. Life in prison, no chance to ever walk free. Eliza's family listened, tears running down their faces. They'd never hear why it happened. They'd never hear him say, "I'm sorry." But they knew one thing. He'd never hurt anyone again. Outside, the mood was mixed. Some people wanted him executed. Others felt life in prison was enough. In the days that followed, Cleotha was moved to a maximum security prison. A cell he'd never leave. A door that would never open again. But the story didn't stop with his conviction. The spotlight turned to everyone who failed Eliza. Parole boards who released a violent kidnapper early. Detectives who left Alicia's case unfinished. A system that treated victims as paperwork instead of people. Eliza's story sparked petitions demanding stricter parole laws. Some politicians called for a one-strike rule for violent felons. At the heart of the anger was a single fact. Eliza should have been alive, a mother, a teacher, a runner training for the Boston Marathon, and instead, she was buried under Memphis soil. In court, Eliza's family spoke during sentencing. Her husband, voice shaking, told the judge, "My sons will grow up without their mother, but they'll know who she was, and what kind of man took her away." Alicia spoke, too. She described the guilt that haunted her, the nights she stayed awake, replaying what might have happened if police had acted sooner. "I tried," she said, "but nobody listened." Her words hung heavy in the courtroom. Cleotha said nothing. Outside, reporters asked Eliza's parents what justice meant. Her father paused, then answered softly, "Justice means no other family goes through this." The courtroom fell silent. The sentence was final. Cleotha Abston would never leave prison alive. But outside, Memphis still felt raw. The streets she once ran felt heavier. Every early morning jogger looked over their shoulder. At the center of it all, Eliza Fletcher. Her photo on lampposts. Candles burned low beside her old running route. Flowers wilted in the summer heat. But grief turned into something else. A spark of resistance. A choice to keep running. A few days after Cleotha's conviction, something remarkable happened. Hundreds of people gathered near the University of Memphis. At dawn, just like Eliza, many had never met her. But they tied their shoelaces in silence, wiped tears from their eyes. Someone pinned a sign to a tree. Finish Liza's run. When the sun broke the horizon, they took off. The same 4-mile loop Eliza ran that morning. Past sidewalks cracked with age. Past brick buildings heavy with memory. Past the place where a dark SUV had waited. Some ran fast. Some walked. But they all kept going. The finish line wasn't marked. There were no medals, but every step felt like defiance. They ran for Eliza, for every woman who runs before sunrise, for the right to be outside without fear. And across Memphis, people watched. Some joined from sidewalks. Others ran their own routes in quiet tribute. On social media, photos flooded in, shoes lined up in driveways, signs reading #RunForEliza. The hashtag spread beyond Tennessee. Runners in other states shared sunrise selfies. They didn't know Eliza, but they understood. Because every woman who runs at dawn knows the fear. Knows the moment you see headlights. Slow down. Knows the calculation. Keep running or cross the street. Eliza's murder became more than one tragedy. It became a mirror. A reminder that danger can be waiting anywhere. And the anger refused to fade. Parents asked why violent felons could be released early. Why DNA evidence from Alicia's assault sat ignored for months. Why warnings had to turn into funerals before anyone listened. Eliza's family didn't speak often, but when they did, it wasn't about revenge. It was about change. They asked for better tracking of repeat offenders, for faster testing of sexual assault kits, for laws that kept predators behind bars. Politicians promised reforms. Bills were drafted, debated, and delayed. Some passed, others stalled in committee, but the voices outside kept growing louder. Eliza's friends organized annual tribute runs. Not races, just people gathering before dawn, finishing miles she never could. The first year, it was a few hundred. The next, thousands. From mothers pushing strollers, to college athletes sprinting ahead, to survivors of violence who walked every step. Every stride carried a message. She was more than a victim. She was a teacher, a mother, a runner, a woman who refused to stop moving forward. In interviews, her husband Richard spoke quietly. He said mornings were the hardest, waking up to the empty side of the bed, packing lunches alone, answering his son's questions. They ask where mommy is, he said. I tell them she loved them more than anything. He kept Eliza's photo in the kitchen, near the table where she once poured cereal for their boys. At night, he read them stories. At dawn, he sometimes ran too. Not far, but just enough to feel close to her. People still debated Cleotha's sentence. Some wanted him executed. Others believed life in prison was worse. But for Eliza's family, the question was simpler. Not about punishment, about prevention. Because behind her murder stood a chain of failures, each link strong enough to stop him. None did. Cleotha shouldn't have been free. Not after kidnapping at gunpoint. Not after Alicia's assault. And yet he was. At memorials, speakers repeated the same words. We can't change what happened, but we can make sure it doesn't happen again. In the years that followed, Eliza's name stayed alive. In charity runs raising money for victims. In school safety programs. In news stories reminding the city what was lost. She became a symbol, but she had been a person first. A woman who loved early morning runs. A preschool teacher whose students drew her crayon portraits. A mother whose boys still looked for her face in crowds. The run she couldn't finish turned into something bigger. A promise. A refusal to let fear win. A city moving forward, one step at a time. Before Eliza Fletcher's final run, before the sunrise that never brought her home, there was Cleotha Abston. His name wasn't new to police files. It had been there for decades. The first arrest? He was 11. robbery. From that moment, the record grew like weeds. Gun possession, assault, gang activity, 16 arrests before turning 16. And then something darker. At 16, Cleotha kidnapped a well-known Memphis attorney. He pulled a gun, forced the man into a car, drove around searching for an ATM. When the attorney tried to scream for help, Cleotha was arrested. Even at 16, the court decided, he's too dangerous. Tried as an adult, sentenced to 24 years in prison. He served 20. Then came November 2020. A parole board granted early release. For years, shaved off his sentence. They believed he deserved a second chance. They hoped prison had changed him. But within months, signs showed it hadn't. Theft, suspicion, and then the night in 2021 when he met Alicia on a dating app. She trusted him. He pulled a gun, assaulted her while she was pregnant. Alicia did everything right. She went to police, filed a report, handed them his dating profile, name, phone, photo, gave DNA evidence. Police had it all. Yet somehow it wasn't enough. The file wasn't processed. The DNA wasn't uploaded. A year later, when Cleotha kidnapped Eliza, the database still showed nothing. The system had two chances to stop him. First, don't release a man with a violent past early. Second, when he strikes again, act quickly. Neither happened. After Eliza's murder, Memphis tried to understand. Why didn't the parole board keep him inside? Why didn't police finish Alicia's report? The answers felt too simple. We were understaffed. Too many cases. Resources stretched thin. But those words couldn't explain away the cost. Eliza's life. A husband left alone. 2 children asking where mommy went. Public anger turned into demands. Petitions called for mandatory full sentences for violent offenders. New bills pushed for faster testing of sexual assault kits. But real change is slow. Faster than paperwork? Sometimes. Faster than politics? Almost never. Eliza's family stayed out of most debates. Their grief was private. They'd lost a person, not a statistic. But others kept talking. Journalists tracked every failure. Community groups asked why men like Cleotha slipped through, and the pattern wasn't new. Violent offenders freed early. Evidence sitting untested. Victims warning police ignored. Eliza's case forced a city to look in the mirror. The truth hurt. Because Cleotha wasn't a ghost. He wasn't hiding in shadows. He'd lived among them. Worked at a cleaning service. Stole credit cards. Lurked in abandoned buildings. All while the justice system watched and did nothing. Some asked, was it neglect? Was it bureaucracy? Or was it that society just didn't see women like Eliza, runners at dawn, young mothers, survivors, as worth urgent action? In court, prosecutors read Cleotha's history aloud. Every page of arrests, every mischance. It felt like an indictment, not just of him, but of everyone who failed to stop him. When Alicia heard Eliza had been murdered, the guilt crushed her, even though it wasn't hers to carry. I tried, she whispered. They had everything they needed. Police finally charged Cleotha for Alicia's assault, but only after Eliza died. Too late to save her. In prison, Cleotha never explained why, never said what made him pick that morning, that route, that woman. The question stayed open. Did he plan to kill her, or did something go wrong? But the answer wouldn't change the ending. Eliza never came home. In interviews, criminal experts pointed out the obvious. Men like Cleotha don't stop until someone stops them. For Eliza's family, the system had stopped him, but only after he took everything. And so Memphis kept asking, how many more Cleothas were out there? How many files sat untouched? How many victims were still waiting to be heard? A city forced to see what happens when warnings go unheeded. Memphis didn't go quiet after the sentencing. Eliza Fletcher's name stayed on every corner. Every sunrise run felt different. Every empty sidewalk felt heavier. The courthouse door had closed on Cleotha Abston. Life in prison. No parole. No appeals that could set him free. But for the city, the real trial had just begun. Parents asked, how do we keep our kids safe? Runners wondered. Do I need to change my route? And everywhere the same thought, why did it have to be her? Eliza wasn't the first victim, but she became a symbol, not just of violence, but of a system that failed twice. In city meetings, officials promised reforms, more funding for DNA labs, faster handling of sexual assault kits, closer supervision of parolees. Some changes happened, some still sit on paper, because real reform is slower than outrage, slower than grief. But the people didn't stop. Each year, they gathered before dawn. Same route, same chill in the air. Runners wore shirts that read, "Finish Liza's run." And they did, for miles, past the place where her phone was found, past the camera that captured her last moments. They ran together, so no one had to run alone. For Richard, the pain stayed raw. 2 young sons who barely remembered the sound of her laugh. Photos of a wedding day that felt like yesterday and also a lifetime ago. They'll grow up, he told a reporter once, voice breaking, but they'll know who their mother was. In her preschool, the kids planted a tree, small at first, roots shallow, but it grew. Each spring, blossoms opened, a reminder that even the worst endings leave something alive. And in classrooms, teachers kept telling Eliza's story, not just how she died, but how she lived, a woman who ran at dawn, who taught children to write their names, who loved the sound of true crime podcasts in her earbuds, a woman who should have been safe. The anger didn't disappear, but it changed shape. It turned into action. Petitions, volunteer patrols, donations to victim advocacy groups. Some saw it as hope. Others called it too little, too late. Yet the run kept growing. In 2025, thousands showed up, not just in Memphis. Across the country, people posted photos under hashtag #RunForEliza, sunrise selfies, street signs blurred in the background, feet hitting pavement in quiet tribute. They ran in cities Eliza never visited. They ran in silence, remembering a woman they never met. Because her story was bigger than Memphis, it was every woman who checks over her shoulder, every runner who crosses the street when headlights slow, every family who waits for someone to come home and prays they do. Eliza's family never asked to become advocates, but grief doesn't ask permission. So they spoke about keeping violent felons behind bars, about finishing reports, testing DNA, closing gaps before another name is added. And the city listened, not perfectly, not fast enough for some, but the conversation changed. In court, Cleotha never gave answers. No why, no apology, and maybe there was no answer that could matter. Because the truth was simple and awful. A man who should have been stopped wasn't. A woman who should have come home didn't. Eliza's story stayed alive, not because of how she died, but because of what people refused to forget. A preschool teacher, a marathon runner, a mother of 2, gone before sunrise, yet somehow still running beside every woman who dares lace up her shoes before dawn. If you watch this far, like this video, share it. Tell someone Eliza's story, because remembering isn't enough, but forgetting is worse.